Now that you know how to identify angle relationships, you're going to see how to use these angle relationships to solve for missing variables and solve for missing angles. So in these practice problems, the first thing you're going to do is determine the relationship. So you're going to say, are the two angles vertical or are they supplementary? And remember, if they're supplementary, they add up to 180 degrees. That's what supplementary means. Then you're going to write an equation for the missing angle. And then lastly, you're going to solve that equation. So that'll give you the missing variable. Now, sometimes that missing variable will be the missing angle, and sometimes you'll have to do a little bit more work to figure out what that angle will be. You'll see what I mean in a second here. Okay, so let's look at these first three examples. So in number one, you have two angles. Are they opposite from each other or do they make a straight line? Well, you have angle A here and then this other angle that is 72 degrees. They make a perfectly straight line. That is called supplementary. I'm just going to put sup, abbreviate it. Okay, if two angles are supplementary, we know that their sum, meaning you add them together. When you add them together, you get 180 degrees. So I'm going to do A plus the other angle, which is 72, is equal to 180 degrees. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to have to solve for the missing variable there, that A. We want to solve for A. So this is just a one-step equation. So if A plus 72 is equal to 180, then to get A, we would subtract 72 from both sides. So I would have just A on that side. So A equals 180 minus 72, which is 108 degrees. So this angle is 108 degrees. And that makes sense. 108, if I wanted to check it, 108 plus 72, they make a straight line. So together they should be 180 degrees. So your solution would be A equals 108 degrees. Okay, let's look at the next two. Are they next to each other? And do they make a straight line? Are they next to each other? Or are they opposite of each other? Well, look across. They are not next to each other. They're opposite of each other, so those are called vertical angles. I'm just going to put the word. What do we know about vertical angles? Well, we know they are equal. So in this case, 75 degrees is equal to x. There's really no equation that you have to solve there. That's just the solution. So the solution is x equals 75. 75 degrees. Okay, the last one over here. Now this one's a little bit confusing, but you should right away realize that they don't make an x. They're not opposite of each other. If I'm looking for this variable here, this z, it does make a straight line. However, it's a straight line with three angles here. So it would be supplementary. But I just have to realize that these three angles add up to 180 degrees. Now this first angle, if it has that little box, that should tell you something there. That should tell you that that angle is 90 degrees. So this would be 90 plus z plus 60 equals 180 degrees. So now these 60 and 90, I can combine those. So that would be 150 plus z equals 180. Okay. Again, just like my first one, to solve this equation, I need to subtract the 150. So I would be left, this would go away, I'd be left with z equals 30. So 30 degrees, z equals 30 degrees. Okay. Now these ones are a little bit more confusing because now we have some major equations we have to set up here. So in this one here, the two angles are right next to each other. They make a straight line, so they are supplementary. Okay, my equation. What do we know about supplementary? They equal 180 degrees. So I'm going to set up an equation. I'm actually going to put it up here because I don't have a lot of space up there. So I have 4x plus 40 angle. 4x plus 40. I got to include that whole thing. 4x plus 40 plus angle next to it, which is 3x. That whole entire thing is supplementary. So that means that whole entire thing equals 180 degrees. Okay, in order to solve this equation, I need to combine like terms here. If I could put the 4x and 3x together, that would make 7x plus 40 equals 180. So this is a two-step equation. Hopefully you remember how to solve the two-step equations. First step, get rid of the 40, subtract 40, both sides. I would have 7x equals 140. Second step, divide by 7. So I'd have 140 divided by 7. So I would get x equals 20 degrees. Make sure you have that so you know how to do that when you go to do that on your own. Now, let me erase this so you can see the picture better. Now, even though we solve for x, if the question asks you to find each of these angles, you would have to do a little bit more. Just because x is 20 doesn't mean this angle is 20 and that angle is 20. In order to figure out what x is actually equal to, or what each of those angles actually equals to, you would have to plug in 20. So this one would be 4, put in the 20, 4 times 20 plus 40. So you'd solve that. So 4 times 20 is 80 plus 40 would give you 120. So this angle here is 120. And then the angle next to it would be 3x. So 3 times 20, which is 60. So if they ask you, which they are going to ask you, what would each angle be, then you have to plug that 20 back into the equation. Okay. Number 5, let's look at that one. So are the two angles next to each other? No, they're across from each other, they're opposite, so they are vertical. What do we know about vertical? They add up to 180? No, they definitely don't add up to 180. They equal each other. So I'm going to set up my equation. 75 equals the other angle. So that whole thing is 4x minus 25. Okay, first step, I got to get that 4x by itself, so I'm going to get rid of a minus 25, so I'm going to add 25 to both sides. So I'm going to have 100 equals 4x. Second step, get rid of the 4, so divide by 4. So x would be equal to 25 degrees. So my solution, x equals 25 degrees. Okay, last one over here, number 6. Do they make a straight line or are they opposite each other? They make a perfectly straight line. So that means they are supplementary. Okay, my equation would be adding them together. Remember, supplementary means the sum is 180. So I'm going to add them together. So 150 plus negative 120 plus 2x. That whole thing is equal to 180. Oops, I kind of fell off the paper here. Okay, so first thing I have to do there is simplify the equation a little bit. So 150 plus negative 120. So I could put that in my calculator, see what that is. So that should give you a positive 30. So 30 plus 2x equals 180. And really for the equation, you could write either one of these. You could write the first one or you could write both equations that are correct. Okay, so now let's solve it. So I gotta get rid of 30 on both sides. So I would have 2x is equal to 150. And then my last step, how do I get rid of that 2? Divide by 2. And I would get x equals 75. Okay. Moving on to the bottom ones here. Now notice this first one here, it doesn't say relationship equation solution. So this one is just asking you, what is the measure of GJC? So GJC, that's this one over here. And then the second question is, what is the measure of LJC? So LJC is this one over here. Well, in order to figure those out, you need to know if they're supplementary or if they're vertical. So if we look at them, they're next to each other and make a straight line. So that would mean they're supplementary. So they add up to 180. So I'm going to write my equation 3x plus 2x plus 20 equal to 180. Okay, simplify this. 3x and 2x would be 5x plus 20 is 180. Okay, solve the equation. First step, subtract 20 on both sides. So you would get 5x equals 160. Last step, I would have to divide by 5. And I would get x equals 32. Now, that doesn't mean both of my answers are 32. This one wants a little bit more. This one wants to know the measure of the angles. So the first one, GJC. GJC, remember that one? That's this one over here. 2x plus 20. So if x is 32, I'm going to do 2 times 32 plus 20. 2 times 32, and you could just plug that into your calculator, plus 20. So that would give me 84 degrees. Okay, the one next to it is 3x. Well, what was x again? 32. So that would just be 3 times 32. And that is 96 degrees. So that would be both of those blanks there. All right, number 8. This one does ask for the relationship here. These ones are across from each other. Hopefully by now you realize that that is vertical. If they're across from each other, then when you set up the equation, they should be equal. 2x plus 6 equals 96. Step equation. So first thing you would do is subtract 6. Second thing would be divide by 2. And you would get x equals 45 degrees. Last one. A little bit trickier because they make it look like a triangle, but really it's the same exact thing. It's still saying this angle and this angle. Those are opposite, they're across from each other, they're equal, they're vertical. So this equation would be a little bit more to it though. It would be 65x minus 12 equals 43x plus 10. Now I have variables on both sides. I have numbers on both sides. So first I'm going to get rid of my plain old number. So a minus 12, I'm going to add 12 to both sides. I'm going to have 65x equals 43x plus 10 plus 12 would be 22. Okay, next step, get rid of my variables on both sides. So I don't want the 43x over here. So I need to subtract them from both. So I would have 65 minus 43, which is 22. So 22x equals, these cancel out, 22. 22x equals 22. My last step is divide by 22. So I would have x equals 22 divided by 22, which is 1. So my solution is x equals 1. Well, if you needed to solve for the angles, remember you have to plug that 1 in. So this would be 65 times 1 minus 12, and this would be 43 times 1 plus 10. Because they're equal, it should give you the same answer. So let's just try it. If I did 65 times 1, that's 65. So 65 minus 12 is 53. If I try it here, 43 times 1 is 43 plus 10, 53. So yeah, they are, I did do it right because they are equal to each other.